In Sandton, Johannesburg. Vuyo, a very warm good morning to you. What is happening right now at the summit?
Well, thanks very much, Dumi. Yes, indeed, we are expecting the official opening of the summit of the heads of state from around the continent. Lots and lots of issues on the table, from some of the current issues like what's happening in Burundi, in the Central African Republic, but of course together with several other long-standing issues, among them the reforms that Africa is proposing with regard to the United Nations Security Council, but also there's a concerted effort to resurrect or to give impetus to the program of the African peer review mechanism. There's also the funding of the African Union. As you know, at the moment, a handful of countries together with the European Union and such blocs are currently funding the African Union, which is a problem. The old adage of he who pays the piper calls the tune. So Dr. Nkosazana Dlamini-Zuma, the chairperson of the African Union, keen to really make sure that Africa funds its own program with the lessons that have been learned from NEPAD, where it is suspected that there was a lot of sabotage, primarily because those who were sponsoring or paying the bills of NEPAD had no interest in actually seeing that program succeeding. So those issues and more are all on the agenda, and as I'm saying, and we are expecting any minute from now the heads of state to walk into that plenary room and begin the formal proceedings to this summit. But as you were saying earlier to me, the one issue that is now currently dominating the agenda here, certainly in the media space where we are, is of course whether South Africa would indeed assist in the apprehension of President Bashir. But from the conversations I've had with some of the top officials within the South African government, but also the AU, the African Union has actually taken a position on this matter, and that position is that no sitting head of state should be held before the ICC, and they have a whole range of reasons why they have taken that position, and we hope to bring you someone who will explain that in greater detail in a few minutes' time. But right now, I'm going to bring in Dr. David Hoile, who has written extensively on the work of the ICC, who's also going to give some insights into how the ICC operates and why it remains a problem, certainly for the African Union. Dr. Hoile, thank you very much for joining us and welcome.
It's a pleasure. Hello.
Well, very, very briefly, I mean, you're not surprised, I'm sure, by what I've just said, that the position of the African Union is that, nothing is going to happen to President Bashir while he's here.
Absolutely right. Although South Africa is a member of the ICC, it's a member state, it's also bound by African Union resolutions which have been unanimously adopted at a number of summits. So there's no impetus for it to actually hand over or surrender President Bashir. Also, just in simple black and white legal terms, President Bashir enjoys sovereign immunity as a sitting head of state, not just in the African context, but internationally. So by international law, African law, the AU resolutions, it's a very, very, very clear case. The underlying issue, of course, ultimately is who actually chooses South Africa's leaders. Is it a European-funded, European-directed court in The Hague, or is it the people of Africa? That's the argument now which is underlying all of this debate.
Let's get into those issues, if we will. starting perhaps with the constitution of the IEC, how it is constituted, the kind of people who tend to preside over matters that come before the ICC.
Well, very interesting issue. I mean, at the end of the day, the court that South Africa and I think 30 other African states signed up for in 1998 is not the court they see before today. It's a very, very dysfunctional court. It's been mired in allegations of procedural irregularities and corruption, and it's also increasingly emerged as a racist court. That aside, the actual functioning of the court itself is incredibly questionable. This is a court set up to try the most difficult aspects of law: war crimes, crimes against humanity, and genocide. Lots of very difficult law. Yet it has seen fit to appoint as full judges of the ICC people who've never even been a lawyer before, let alone a judge. So if these judges by and large have been arrived at through vote trading. Now, vote trading for judges within these institutions provides mediocrity. It doesn't actually provide excellence of vision or competence. So just at that level alone, the people actually presiding over these incredibly difficult cases are not even lawyers. The chair of the bench, for example, on the Kenyatta case is a Japanese diplomat. Quite how she qualifies as an international judge is beyond me, but more importantly, has been called into question within Africa.
Well, let's talk a bit about just how the court operates. I mean, you've touched on the issue of the caliber of people and them lacking experience, and the case you just cited of a diplomat who was turned judge. Let's talk about how the court operates and how that helps or doesn't help its very cause.
Well, one of the most damning conclusions, just in terms of the figures alone, is that the court has, I think, as of last year or 2 years ago, received 9,000 complaints about alleged war crimes, crimes against humanity, etc., within 139 countries worldwide. The reality is that it has chosen to only focus on 8 African situations, 8 African countries, and it has actually chosen to indict just under 40 African citizens. So this is an exclusive focus on Africa and Africans. It has not actually actively pursued any of the allegations it has received with regards to ongoing alleged crimes, war crimes in Afghanistan, or events actually in Iraq and other places since its formation in 2003. Now, this is just at the heart of the whole issue. If there was a court in Britain, for example, that only went after black Britons, it would be thrown out of, it would be a laughingstock. Is
it by design, though, or is it just a consequence of the things that are actually happening?
It's not by design. I mean, although the actual Rome Statute was cobbled together in a very ad hoc way in 1998, the Rome Statute is the actual body of law that actually guides the ICC. Although it was actually put together largely by NGOs, the actual reality is that even that, which was a difficult statute to actually enforce, has itself been violated and not actually adhered to at all. So the actual practice is that, exactly as you said, he who pays the piper calls the tune. The ICC is funded to the extent of, I think, between 60 and 66% of its budget comes from the European Union. And those big, within the EU, the big 5 funders of the ICC are the 5 ex-colonial powers within Africa: Britain, France, Germany, Spain, and Italy. And again, there are a whole range of questions that are being asked why they've actually focused exclusively on Africa.
Well, isn't the question why Africans would sort of, subscribe to such a seriously flawed system?
Well, and that's a very, very good question. And again, the simple fact is that the actual pursuit of justice is a fantastic human virtue, especially given what we've seen actually post-war, World War II, etc., and post-war. The simple fact is that the court that Africa signed up for, overwhelmingly and enthusiastically, which it perceived would go after perpetrators of crimes against humanity and war crimes without fear or favour, is not the racist institution you see before you today. And they've actually given, I mean, most African countries, the AU itself, I think, gave the courts, a number of years to actually show itself, to come into its own. But in fact, if anything, it's getting worse and worse and worse, not just in terms of its exclusive focus on Africa, but the actual mechanics of the court, the day-to-day functioning of the court is shambolic. You've had trial after trial thrown out because of actual prosecutorial misconduct that within any European country would have resulted in prosecutors being disbarred. But they continue in office within the ICC.
So where to from here? I mean, what's the way out of the quagmire that seemingly everyone is finding themselves in? On the one hand, Africans are keen, to pursue what the court was set for, originally, but clearly it is not doing what it was supposed to do. So where to from here?
The solution is an African court. Africans should be judged by their own peers. So there's, Europeans would not allow themselves to be judged by an African court, and why should Africans, in effect, go along with that concept of Europeans once again saying that they know what's in the best interest of Africa? So, an African court, and I'm very happy that has gone some way down the road. The structures are in place. I think it's only a matter of time in terms of some ratifications from African countries, and that mechanism will be there. That is, I think, the way out. It's a positive solution one can come up to.
Well, the African Union is battling to fund itself. To fund a court of that will do what we hope a court like the ICC should have been doing. It's going to be a tall order, isn't it? It
will be a tall order, but having said that, the ICC is the worst possible advert for international justice. If you were against the whole concept of international justice right from the start, the ICC is the organisation you would want to have seen come out of it. It's a travesty of the whole concept. So any institution that Africa establishes will by definition be that much more efficient, that much more effective, and that much more credible than the ICC has been over the last 12 years.
Dr. Hoile, thank you very much.
Thank you.
David Hoile, who has worked extensively in this area, writing a lot of publications that has done extensive research in this area. We do hope to bring you still the official African Union position on the matter. We hope that someone will be joining us pretty soon to actually explain the African Union's position on this matter. As I said earlier, we are expecting the African heads of state to begin the formal part of this gathering that is taking place here in Sandton, where they'll be discussing a whole range of issues affecting our continent, the continent of Africa. For now, though, we're going to take a quick break. Don't go away. We will be back right after this.